I'm Brian Goldfinger from Goldfinger Injury Lawyers. We'd like to wish you and your family a happy holiday season. Remember, if you're drinking, texting, smoking cannabis, you shouldn't drive, or somebody's going to have to hire my law firm to set things straight. Visit goldfingerlaw.com.
Hello and welcome to the Raptors weekly podcast for the week of December 3rd. I'm your host, William Lou. I'm joined on the podcast by Raptors Public's very own, I would say pretty much our best edition of the offseason. In addition to Kawhi and Danny Green, those were pretty good, but we also got Victor Raso writing for the site and his week, not even weekly, it's like game-by-game breakdowns. They're like probably the most insightful thing you'll read on Raptors Public right now. So welcome to the podcast, Victor.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us about, first off, you have an extensive playing career. In your bio it says 3-time U Sports champion. It's kind of weird seeing it as U Sports, but, walk us through your playing career and what you're doing now.
I always say CIS. I never say U Sports. I have to consciously think about that. Yeah. It's still kind of a weird name, but I played basketball my whole life. My dad was a coach at McMaster growing up. Then I went to Mac, played at Mac for 3 years, and then after my third year, decided to transfer to the Carleton Ravens. Played for Dave Smart, who's one of the best coaches in the world, I believe, and had a lot of success there. We won 2 national championships, and then I stayed and I coached at Carleton the year Dave was on a sabbatical, and we won another national championship. After that, I fully got the coaching bug when I was 13 years old, but after that, once I coached at Carleton, came back to Hamilton, took the Cardinal Newman senior boys team to 4th place finish at OSSA. Then last year was the lead assistant for the Niagara River Lions of the National Basketball League of Canada. And then that leads me to today, where not currently coaching a team because River Lions switched from the NBL to the newly formed CEBL that starts up in May. So to keep up with my time, to ensure I had a coaching grind going on, that I was getting better, I started doing these breakdowns of the games, and then got in contact with Blake, and Blake thought it'd be awesome if it was on Raptors Republic, and that's kind of where we are now. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, look, we're better off for it at the site. Walk me through that transition, basically, between going from a player and then immediately stepping over to that coaching chair. Because I've looked into your bio a little bit. You were captain at Mac. You were also named captain at Carleton. Was that a seamless transition for you? And also, the fact that you caught the coaching bug at 13. How did that happen? Is it mostly because you're basically you're the son of a basketball icon here in Canada?
Well, the coaching bug thing was because some kids grew up around basketball all the time and watching guys play and playing. I was always playing, but I was always around the coaches. So from as early as I can remember, I would go to practices, CIS practices or U Sports practices, all the time. But I'd be sitting in the coaches' room beforehand, or before guys would come into the change room for pregame talks. I'd be sitting in there while coaches were discussing things and writing game plans on the board. So from early on, that's kind of how I learned basketball from a coach's perspective. And then the fact that I just wasn't super athletic, that I always kind of knew if my basketball career, if I wanted to become a professional in basketball, I would have been making very limited amount of money playing in mid to low level European teams. So I knew from a long time that if I wanted to make it to the NBA or be a lifelong basketball professional, that it would be in coaching, not playing. So but in terms of the other question about getting to the transition from coaching or from playing to coaching, when I went to Carleton, part of my recruiting process with Dave was him saying, well, I was doing my MBA there. Mm-hmm. So I knew I was going to be in school for 3 years. And he said to me, I want you to be a coach here when you're done your final 2 years of eligibility, but some things need to happen. You have to be viewed as someone who can make that transition from player to coach by your teammates. And if your teammates don't respect you to that extent, to the extent that our coaches need to be respected, both in terms of how hard they work and their knowledge of the game, then no promises, you know? So I knew that going in, that I needed to have the right approach as a player to make sure that I could, you know, transition from player to coach successfully, because as you can imagine, it's not easy if you're going with guys who you know, hang out with all the time and play with on a daily basis, to having to tell them hard things that they don't necessarily want to hear, you know, like that's not always an easy thing to do. But I mean, it kind of fit into the kind of the way I played basketball, right? I was always all about team and the competitive side of things, more opposed to guys who just kind of like go out there to just, you know, hang around and just have fun. Like I was always about winning all the time. So it was easy for my teammates to view me in that light.
By the way, this topic of leadership has sort of come up because, you know, Pop randomly took a stab at Kawhi for no reason about his leadership. Yeah. But, I mean, you know, you've been around the game your entire life. Like, just from a, like, in your perspective, like, what makes a good leader in a basketball team? And then from, you know, obviously you're not, like, well, I don't know, maybe you are, like, really close to the Raptors. But even watching from afar, like, which guys do you identify right away as leaders for the Raptors? And, you know, guys that people really respect?
Well, like, of course, I mean, your best player is a leader in some capacity. You know, they may not be the vocal leader, but they are a leader, because as they go, you go. So obviously Kawhi is, for Pop to say Kawhi is not a leader, I mean, I haven't seen the whole quote in context, but I think that's a little bit crazy. Like, if Kawhi Leonard is out there and he's not trying and he's not playing hard on defense, and he's still the same old quiet guy, that's going to have an effect on everybody. And you're therefore a leader, you know? He plays so hard all the time, and you can tell the guy wants to win. Like, whether he opens his mouth or not, he is going to be a leader. And I actually think he's a pretty good one, to be honest. Like, you look at how hard those guys play. But Lowry, of course.
Of course, yeah.
You know, he's got his things that annoy me, specifically how much he gets on reps, you know, because that can also have a negative impact on your team if everyone starts complaining all the time. But how can you not play hard for Lowry? Like, he can do some crazy things out there that make you mad, but at the same time, he is insanely competitive, and he's always trying to win.
Yeah. When do you see a $30 million per year player lead the league in charges? You know what I mean? Like, that never happens.
Gosh, you're never.
Yeah.
When do you see anyone take charges in the NBA?
Seriously.
I would love to know who's in second place in charges.
I think Lowry has like more than double. That's what it was last year. It was like him and Ersan Ilyasova.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of just leadership in general, I mean, I'm more of the boat of someone like Lowry, you know, who's all about winning all the time and is not afraid to, you know, say what needs to be said, because if you got to hold people's hands and be nice to them when they're not getting their job done, and it's the same thing you've talked to them multiple times about, then you're just not going to win in a super competitive sport, right? Like the NBA, you're not going to win if you have to be nice to everybody all the time and it's okay, you know, you'll get it next time kind of thing. You just have no chance. Like, you look at the Warriors, I always compare everything to the Warriors because everyone's trying to beat them, right?
Yeah.
Like, say what you want about Draymond, but Draymond has the respect of Steph, Clay, and KD, guys who are better at basketball than him probably, and he can yell right in those guys' face. Like, he can scream at Steph when Steph's not doing something. He can scream at KD when KD's not doing something, and those guys respond.
Yeah.
You know? Like, that's what it takes to be an incredible leader, where you can actually have a good enough relationship with someone to hold them accountable to the things that require winning, regardless of how good they are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things with the Raptors is that, like, you know, Lowry can be abrasive. We've seen it all the time. But, like, you know, all these guys respect him. Like, they all love him. Like, look at the intro. Like, you know, everyone is getting down on their knees doing weird stuff, you know, like, you know, trying to cheer him on. And then, like, you know, everyone speaks very highly of Kyle. No one ever says a bad word about him. And then, like, you know, part of that goes to the fact that, like, in the summertime, he's leading these guys in workouts and stuff like that. Like, he really is a gift for this team. Pivoting over, actually, I wanted to ask, like, what was your game like if you had an NBA comparison? Because I was looking over your numbers, and I was like, one guy that popped in my mind was Anthony Parker. And I don't know if that's because, you know, maybe physical similarities, but, I mean.
I wish I was Anthony Parker.
Oh, of course. But I'm talking, like, stylistically.
I mean, when I was at Mac, like in my third year, I was a first team OUA All-Star, and I scored a lot more than I did at Carleton, mainly because my role was different.
Yeah.
That was probably closer to Anthony Parker, except when I was at Mac, I was the worst defender in the world.
Oh.
So maybe not. I mean, I always used to make fun of my friends, like guys who could score. I'd call them like a cold Eddie House.
Wow.
I mean, I was pretty, like I rebounded, I assisted, I scored.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to Carleton, I was much improved on the defensive end, and I was strictly like spot up shooter, like rebounded hard, passed well, but I wasn't a creator at all. So, I mean, kind of Danny Green.
Okay.
I like that one. If anyone ever hears that I'm making NBA comparisons with myself, I'm going to get absolutely ripped apart. Like one time, this is a hilarious Dave Smart story, but we were talking about this kind of stuff in our locker room at Carleton, and he walked in, and I said my NBA comparison is whoever. I said a name, and he just was like, "What are you? You can't ever say you have an NBA comparison. Like, who do you think you are comparing yourself to an NBA basketball player? You gotta be out of your mind." Like, just absolutely destroying me for the fact that I compared myself to someone in the NBA. So,
well,
but yeah.
Danny
right. Green. I'll go with Danny Green.
Yeah, Danny Green. The thing is, like, not to gas you up or anything, but like Victor could ball. Okay, Victor could ball. Look up his numbers. Look up his track record here. All right, let's move over to the coaching side of the thing. One thing I'm always really interested in is like how people who have played and are really within the game like see the game. Like when you watch a Raptors game and when you break it down. First off, you're probably watching them on tape delay, right? Like there's no other way to watch tape other than if you can pause and rewind and stuff like that. But
right.
What are you watching for when you go into the game? It's kind of a hard general question, but
Well, it's actually a really good question because I have to do this. I have to like stop and remind myself what I'm looking for all the time because, the reason I started doing this before I was working for the Raptors Republic was to try and reverse engineer how Nick Nurse coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I started with Boston, but it just became too much. I had to do just the Raptors, and I wanted to look at just what is happening on the floor. Don't look too far into anything other than exactly what you see, and then build like a database of, okay, these are the kind of tendencies they have. Well, all right, if they are always digging at the nail, then that must be a defensive philosophy. So that's the way I kind of looked at it from the start was don't be looking to, hit the home run with I can see something that no one else can see. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just watching the game and seeing, okay, what are they doing technically, offensively? All right, why are they doing that? Are they trying to go after someone on the defensive end? Are they playing to their strength? Is it just a free-flowing situation where it's neither and they're just playing? And then the same thing defensively, right? Like, are they always handling ball screens a specific way? Are they changing it up based on the Raptors personnel? Are they changing it up based on the offensive personnel? Every single situation, just looking at it and then saying to myself, okay, is this happened consistently throughout the game? If it has, why is it happening that way? Is it random? Is it a coach's decision? So that's the way I look at it.
And then, so from what you've seen of the Raptors this year, I mean, where would you say Nick Nurse has really succeeded in terms of changing from because I'm assuming you saw a lot of Raptors last year, maybe not in the same depth because you weren't breaking it down as much, but going from Dwayne Casey to Nick Nurse, like which things have Nick Nurse has he really implemented that has sort of led to tangible changes?
So in fairness, I watched the Raptors last year, but not nearly to the same extent. Like I wasn't breaking down their games. And honestly, I didn't like the Raptors last year or in the last couple years. Not because I'm not a Raptors fan. I'll always be a Raptors fan. I just didn't really like the way they played.
Okay.
The biggest thing, obviously, I mean, he got Kawhi Leonard. Like that's a massive jump, but it's not everything. Like Dwayne Casey had buy-in from the guys, so you can't say he didn't. Nick Nurse seems to have a different level of buy-in, or maybe that's the same level of buy-in with Kawhi and Danny Green and an improved Pascal. I'm not really sure. But Nick Nurse does a really good job of, I think he does a really good job of figuring out what the Raptors are going to need to be good at to win a championship.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like my knock on Dwayne Casey over the years was that, like, if you look at everything from the perspective of, to win a championship, things are going to go bad. And if things go bad against Golden State, what are we going to be able to have to do?
Right.
And against Golden State, you, on your best day, you're never going to beat them with Serge Ibaka and JV on the floor. You have too many weaknesses. They'll just destroy you.
Yeah.
You know? So if you look at everything from that perspective and work backwards, I love what Nick Nurse is doing, because Nick Nurse is, like, every single time the Raptors do something, you can always kind of say, all right, well, they're doing this because this has a potential of them being able to actually compete for a championship, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, splitting up the JV Surge thing, like, obviously everybody talks about it, but I don't understand why they never did that before. Like, you're not winning an NBA championship with 2 5-men on the floor.
Right.
How are you going to cover Golden State? You're not going to. How are you going to cover Houston and teams like that? You know? So, that's the thing I like about Nick Nurse the most.
Yeah, I mean, there is a pretty big difference in terms of coaching for the regular season and coaching for specific matchups in the playoffs, right? Because
exactly,
it's 2 entirely different games. And I think the Raptors have always been quite successful in finding out a formula for the regular season because, like, you know, like, based on my untrained eye, really, when I see the regular season, I'm like, can you have, A, healthy players, B, can you be consistent, and can you just execute things every single night? And if you do that, generally speaking, you're going to go to the playoffs, right? If you can keep everyone in the same boat and you can do things consistently, then yeah, you can go to the playoffs. But then in the playoffs, it's really just about how many different things can you do in terms of what scenarios can you adapt to, which matchups. Matchups become so big. And I think this year in particular, you know, I think Nick Nurse you could definitely see it within games. He does change up the matchups a lot. I think in that Boston game, really early in the season, it was like, he's like, well, Pascal's not really working much because the Celtics are just sagging off of him, and then he switched up with OG, and it's like he's tried different lineups, and even with the Serge and JV thing, like he went back to Serge and JV a couple of times this season when it's been really necessary, and so I think that kind of flexibility with Nurse is really going to pay off in the playoffs. But I mean, in terms of the Raptors, still do have some weaknesses. I think some of it right now is based on execution, some of it is, you know, maybe structural, but in terms of just structural weaknesses in the offense or defense, like if you were an opposing coach looking to scheme against the Raptors, how would you attack them offensively and defensively?
Oh, that's awesome. First of all, you do have a very good eye, by the way. So
Thank you.
Give yourself credit for it. But what I would do, so I'll start offensively. If I was attacking the Raptors, I would run them off of as many down screens as possible, especially 1-5 down screens. Like, they do not. We've seen it over and over again this year how poorly they cover down screen. Like, I think their defensive philosophy is to chase every down screen, right? So they'll switch equals, but if Ibaka or Valanciunas' man is setting the screen, they're going to chase every single time. And that chase, like in the NBA, a good enough wing player, and like you're talking super elite wing players, are always going to create separation on like when the screen starts, right? So if you lose that separation and then you're chasing over top every single time, it just puts so much pressure on a defense, you know? And the Raptors just keep getting destroyed by that. I mean, they got destroyed by Golden State. They got destroyed by Detroit.
The Pelicans.
Sorry, the Pelicans.
Yeah.
The Pelicans with Etuan Moore and Drew Holiday. Oh my God, that was insane. But that's a specific area I would go after them. Individually, I think the Raptors' biggest issues are, you put JV on the ball screen as much as possible, especially dribble handoffs. Dribble handoffs, I say that because the Raptors try to weak every ball screen, right? So they try to, if it's not on the wings, they try to force everyone to use their weak hand. If you go dribble handoff, you can often get guys going downhill against JV with their strong hand.
Okay.
And then, the 2 weak links, I think, other than JV and the ball screen are, Lowry. You've got to go at Lowry because he's the engine, right? He's not, his lack of size defensively, he's tough and he's a bulldog, but at the end of the day, like, he's what, 6'2"?
Yeah.
And he doesn't have long arms, right? So he's going to struggle. Him and Van Vliet when they're on the floor, and then I don't think Danny Green is a great on-ball defender. I think off the ball he's very smart, very savvy, has great anticipation, but when there's been too many times on film where it's like, oh, Danny Green, look, stay in front of the guy a little bit. Like, what's his name, Fournier, at the end of that Orlando game. Like, I get it. You don't want to give up a 3, but that blow by is pretty insane. Those are the guys, right? I would go after JV every time he's on the floor. I'd make Lowry and Danny Green cover one-on-one, and then I would run them off a ton of screens. Stay away from Kawhi, stay away from OG, stay away from Pascal. But again, like, if you just think about that, think about how specific you have to get offensively.
Oh yeah, for sure.
To attack their weaknesses, and if you don't have great guys in those spots to attack them, then it's pretty tough.
The point you made about down screens, I think there is, if you look around the Eastern Conference, I think the Raptors' ambitions are very clear. They want to make it to the playoffs. They want to make it to the finals. And then we'll see what happens against Golden State. But I think the Raptors, if they made the finals, will consider the season a success. But, yeah, if you look around the Eastern Conference, there's a couple of teams where, as you mentioned, that 1-5 action, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a 1, right? Like, let's say it's like the Sixers are playing, right? Like the Sixers, we're going to put Lowry on Redick. And so then you're going to have Embiid and Redick. And they have probably the most dangerous dribble handoff action in the entire league right now. It's just super annoying watching the Sixers do it over and over again because they'll always get an open look. Those two guys have really good chemistry. But I feel like that's a team in the Sixers where they can really attack the Raptors at one spot in that weakness.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's going to be tough. And that's why the thing I like the most about this Raptors team is their ability to switch everything, right? And they're going to have to get to a point where the only guy who's not switching is Lowry.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have to. Like, if you want to be a great team in today's NBA, you got to follow the mold of Golden State. Like, Golden State struggled obviously against the Raptors the other day. They tried to switch onto Kawhi, and then he burned them so many times that they had to get away from it. But
I mean, they were also playing like their worst centers, like eventually those guys aren't going to be on it'll be Draymond, and all of a sudden it'll be oh shit, well, we can't do anything now.
Exactly, yeah. But see, the Raptors are kind of built like that now because they can switch Pascal onto anybody.
Right.
They can switch Serge onto anybody, not with the same kind of confidence you can Draymond, but he can still, for many centers in the league, he's got to be one of the best on-ball defenders, especially at guards. So the Raptors kind of have the ability to do that.
Right.
They don't want to do it right now, though. And I think that I don't know if that's because it's so early in the year and they don't want to show their hand yet, or it's because they want to get better at what they're doing now. I'm not too sure, but you're right. Like, you run into teams like Philadelphia, teams like Milwaukee, who are going to just attack the crap out of Lowry and Van Vliet. Like, you're going to have to figure out ways to handle them. And the way they're doing it right now, it's tough. It's tough because it puts so much pressure on the paint.
It was a bit interesting in that Warriors game that they didn't really try to do more switching. I thought they really kept their system intact. I don't know if that was them not trying to tip their hand, which who knows. They do play the Warriors again in 2 weeks. Maybe they throw a different look and they'll be more successful. But yeah, I mean, I think the Raptors do have a lot of capabilities of switching, and they just haven't really. It hasn't really been as prevalent. I almost feel like the Raptors switched last year more than they did this year. What about offensively in terms of, the Raptors' offense has been great. I think they're second in offensive rating right now, just behind Milwaukee, and it's pretty close. But I feel like there are times where the Raptors' offense looks a bit stagnant, and I guess my other concern really is just that, it looks like the team is a little bit too dependent on Lowry. Lowry gets everyone going, and when that happens, it's a wrap. The Raptors are going to win. But if you take Lowry out of the game and force him to be a scorer and then really pack the paint and take away that role, it looks a lot more disjointed.
Right. So these are my two things about the Raptors on offense, is that Lowry's not a great creator, right? He's really good with pace. In transition, he's really good. And like you said, when he's going, the whole team is going.
Yeah.
But when those playoff games come around and the game slows significantly, and he can't, get those 4 or 5 extra steps in transition, he can't catch guys sleeping off guard, he doesn't have that separation going into the ball screens. Well, then what? And we've seen that in the past with him because the game slows down. It becomes more of like a college type game, where it becomes very tactical in the half court, and your ability to create separation within a box becomes so much more important because you don't have that free flowing nature of a regular season game. So Lowry's improved in that department, and it will really see it come playoff time how much better he does. But the reason I'm okay with the stagnant Raptors offense is because when you play Golden State in the playoffs and they start switching everything, you're not going to be able to create off of the ball screen. You're not going to be able to create much off of down screens. You're going to have a guy who can go. Like, you're going to have to say, all right, we can live with Kawhi versus Draymond one-on-ones 15 times tonight, and we're going to live with, attacking Steph Curry in the ball screen every single time. So now the Raptors actually have a guy who we can go to. You know, like we can go to Kawhi Leonard against any player in the world and know that we can create if a team doesn't give us anything else. So when everyone says like, the Raptors are so heavily dependent on Kawhi, we're so slow offensively sometimes, don't move the ball very well, I'm with them. I understand where they're coming from. But at the end of the day, if we're going to win, we're going to need Kawhi to be that guy. Like, if you can't create advantages off of actions and ball screens and everyone's going to switch, well, you need to give someone the ball and they need to make plays for everybody else. So that's the way I see it.
One thing that's kind of bothered me about the way they use Kawhi is I feel like at the end of the game, they're a little bit predictable. They always want Lowry to screen and then get that switch so Kawhi could attack a small guy, because they ran that all the time with DeRozan. Like, that was like one of two plays the Raptors were running at the end of games. But I don't feel like that's the best way to use Kawhi. I think like end of game execution for the Raptors, I mean, they've gone to Kawhi, and that's the right idea, but I don't think they've necessarily put him in the best spots to score. Like, how would you approach, like, let's say it's a tie game, 10 seconds left, you call timeout. What are you like drawing up? Who do you have on the floor, and how do you get that ball to Kawhi?
With the advantage of seeing Kawhi in late game scenarios, I would go to him still, of course, but I would go to him on the wing and on the catch, right? Okay. So if he could get like an 18-foot, post up on the wing where he can just jab and then make his decision off the jab, I think he's so much better, because he is a pretty good ball handler. He's a very good ball handler, but he's not a great passer off the dribble. So when he's coming off that ball screen, like, there's a lot of times he almost has to predetermine if he reads the defense early enough, he passes it. But it gets to a certain point where it's not necessarily fluid. Like, how when DeLon comes off a ball screen or Lowry comes off a ball screen, the ball's flying all over the place. Yeah. Leonard's much more sticky, right? Yeah. So that's why I'd say go off the catch. Clear, isolate a side of the floor, 3 shooters on the offside, and then you can keep Siakam at like the dunker, or Siakam or Serge at the dunker spot. Probably Siakam. Sure. And then let Leonard make the decision off his jab, because his jab series is really good. Yeah. And you can see the floor much more, much better if he's not dribbling. And he's a tough cover. He's a tough cover, especially when he's jabbing people and he can get you off him, create some separation. I think I would use him more that way. Although attacking a guard in a switch situation, or trying to get them to a guard to shock it or hedge it instead of, so that they won't switch on a ball screen, is not a bad option. Yeah. Like, if he makes that pass to Serge a little bit earlier, or doesn't pass at all, he probably scores on that play, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a pet peeve. I mean, I had the same thought. Like, you just really, you clear the floor, you give it to Kawhi in the post. I think that's probably the best way to do it. And also, he's very big, he's very strong, and his arms are like impossibly long. So it's not like it's gonna be hard to impulse the ball, like to give him the ball in the post. It's
he's got to be one of the hardest guys to cover in the world.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's not like DeRozan, where like DeRozan was like very good at going downhill, but like he's still a little bit smaller, and like it's a little bit easier to swallow up DeRozan. Like, even on a switch, even if you get a big guy against Kawhi, I think Kawhi can still get a shot off, right? So yeah, I would do the same thing.
We saw down.
What's that?
Sorry, I was gonna say we saw down the stretch against Golden State. Like, Durant is long, and Kawhi gave Durant problems. Like, he created enough separation to get his shot off consistently. So. Yeah,
for sure. Going back to the game breakdowns and stuff, I mean, was there a game this year that was A, your favorite, and also B, maybe the most illustrative in terms of, the one game where you took the most out of, in terms of where the Raptors showed you either weaknesses or strengths that, you found really informative?
There's been a lot of them. Okay. A little recency bias is the Memphis game. I love the Memphis game. Yeah. Because the Memphis game was cool because, the Grizzlies came out and offensively, they were like, if you're gonna drop on the ball screen, we're just gonna mark us all to death. That like we're just gonna destroy you, right?
Yeah.
And he was just hitting shots on the pop. They were diving the closest guard, like the guard who would have to help or who could help onto the pop. They were diving his man to the basket. Celtics do it all the time, and that was taking the guy away from Gasol, or that guy was going and they were getting the back cut. It was really nice to see. And then defensively, they just said, we're not losing to Kawhi. We will not. We can lose to you, but we're not losing to Kawhi. And they just kept throwing so many people at him, and that was fun because like it was almost like a college game. Like it was playoff, like very technical.
Definitely.
And then, not to mention, the Raptors had 5-game winning streak, or was it 5 at that point? I think it was 5.
Yeah, something like that.
And then they had Golden State coming up, so it was a big potential for a trap game. Memphis is good at home. And then to see the Raptors like go through all those frustrations and to adjust, for Kawhi to adjust the way he was just reading the offense, for the Raptors to adjust the way they were playing ball screens, and Van Vliet to just pretty much say like I'm not losing, and took over the ball screen. Like he forced Conley over every single ball screen.
Yeah.
They didn't have to worry about the drop. They didn't have to switch. Like that was awesome. I really liked that because it was like, here's the problem. Here's what Memphis has identified you're not very good at. What are you going to do about it? Here's some, hard times to get through. And then the Raptors answered and they won. And I mean, that was awesome. It's fun when the game is like, you can break it down like that,
Yeah, for sure. I thought Serge was great in that fourth quarter too. The way he was able to like extend his defense and stuff like that. I mean, that's one thing with Serge where it's like really underrated. The fact that he's actually comfortable coming to the perimeter, and like his positioning is, generally speaking, pretty good for those. Because it's easy for big guys to get out of position and then spoil the whole defense like that. One thing I think that's been sort of confusing all Raptors observers this year is like how much the bench has fallen off. Obviously, they've had some like personnel changes with the bench, and maybe that's just the entire answer right there. They don't have Pascal and Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl was very solid for the Raptors last year. I loved watching him play. But, I mean, what are you seeing from the bench? Like, why is the bench struggling to the way it is? Because, like, when you look at the individual names, the talent is still pretty good, such that it should be able to work. It just seems like it doesn't work together.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And, I mean, that's probably why we're starting to see Lowry and Leonard more with that group.
Pascal as well.
Pascal as well, yeah. I mean, it's tough when they don't really have a creator out there, like JV can post up against the right matchup, so you can put the ball into him. But again, like he's an improved passer, but he's not necessarily a guy you want to run your offense through consistently, right? Nor can you, again, if it's not the right matchup. And Vliet is small. It's tough when you're an NBA ball screen guard and you're small, because if you get too deep, it's really hard to be a good passer.
Yeah.
Like Lowry struggles with it sometimes as well when he gets deep against bigger people, and he just can't find the advantages that the defense is giving them. I mean, him and DeLon are having some issues like that. Like he's probably a better scorer than DeLon. DeLon's probably a better reader. But what helps neither of them is the fact that they're the only two creators, right? Like if CJ was playing closer to a JJ Redick type of scorer where it was like you had to chase him all over the place, and what are we going to do? Like you have to, your guys have to be aware that CJ Miles on the floor, like a big time shooter who can draw help if he curls, and a real creator from a shooting perspective. I mean, that would help a lot, but he just hasn't been that guy, right? So I mean, that's tough too. Like you've got two young point guards who are good. They're not incredible. Neither one of them are insanely squirrely or shifty out there where they can just score one-on-one all the time. They need advantage situations. And I mean, it doesn't help when you're not shooting with that, like that second group is not shooting at an insane level. Like CJ hurts, Yeah. It's unfortunate because I like him, and Powell was playing all right too, but they need to have a shooter off the bench who's putting pressure on defenses.
Yeah, for sure. I think honestly, like, even though the bench is talented, like I just don't really see, unless CJ really rebounds, which no one really knows why CJ has fallen off like this. Like apparently all reports were that he came into camp super in shape and he looks that way. It just hasn't really worked for him, and he looks so frustrated. Like when you see him, like, and like I think it's like mental part for him too, which is strange for a 15-year vet. I think you would normally expect those guys to sort of just roll with it, but like he makes like one or two bad plays. Also, I don't understand for a guy who's played more than a decade in the NBA how bad he is at defense. Like, he's just always gambling and out of position. It's painful to watch. But
early in the year though, didn't you think he was rebounding super hard?
Yeah, he looked like he was trying to make all sorts of hustle plays, like deflections, like going for random dunks, and you're like, oh wow, this is gonna be great for CJ. But he can't shoot. None of it matters if he can't shoot. That's the only thing he does well at the NBA level. And the rest of the stuff does not matter unless he shoots. Which is why I think, maybe the Raptors got to look into making some personnel changes. Whether that's, finding another creator off the bench. I don't think they really need like a Lou Williams type of guy because I just generally don't think that that's super effective, especially in the playoffs. But I mean, they need some shooting. And quite honestly, like we talked about JV earlier, but like his defensive issues are such that you can't play Serge 48 minutes at center, right? So you need some backup center to come in and maintain your system. And, obviously backup centers are not perfect, but if you're going to go to the finals, you need 48 minutes of solid defense at center. And I feel like, that's also one area they can address.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm with you on that. Like Valanciunas has he has value in the NBA.
Definitely.
In the right matchup.
Yeah.
In the right matchups, right? Like Nurse does a good job most of the time making sure he's out there only in situations that work for him, not against athletic bigs or bigs who have to pull him out. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I was hoping that Korver would have somehow they would have swung a deal to get him because, I mean, he's an upgrade for CJ, right?
Yeah,
you don't have to play him big minutes, and when he comes in, he's gunning.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if they'll get rid of JV, though.
It's tough. The market is I think if they get rid of JV, they got to bring another big guy back in return. And I think in that regard, like obviously big men, like the value of big men has just dropped off a cliff in the last like 5 years. But that could work for the Raptors' advantage, right? Like maybe some team looks at JV and says we need a boost in scoring, and the Raptors see we need a boost in defense, and maybe that works. But it's hard to find a guy like that out there. I've been throwing out Tristan Thompson as a name only as like a prototype. But like even Tristan Thompson specifically, like wouldn't be bad. I mean, he has a history of success against Boston, like him versus Al Horford. Al Horford can't match his physicality on the boards, and so it's always an issue for Horford. And then Tristan's one of the best switch guys in the league in terms of big men, and we saw that against the Warriors. So like if your ambitions are to go that far in the playoffs, then Tristan somehow makes sense. I just don't think offensively it's going to help the Raptors whatsoever because he's definitely worse than JV offensively outside of offensive rebounds.
Yeah, but offensive rebounds could be his form of creating offense, right?
That's true.
I'm with you. Tristan Thompson is exactly the type of defender that you need to win a championship in today's modern basketball, right? You need a guy like Pascal is the perfect 4 right now. Mm-hmm. Tristan,
like Pascal can't play 5, right?
I think he can. I mean, it depends. Okay. You saw who was the game? It was the Memphis game when he had to cover JaMychal Green.
Yeah.
Is that the right name, JaMychal Green?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And he posted up Siakam a couple times, and that's when you really start to realize like his lack of girth, right? He's pretty skinny.
Yeah.
I mean, but he can. If Draymond is a 5, Pascal can cover the 5. It's just a matter of can you cover big 5s, So.
Yeah.
But Tristan Thompson and Serge Ibaka, Pascal, they can all switch out to 1.
That'd be one hell of a defensive lineup at center.
Crap.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. Serge at the 5, Pascal at the 4, OG, Kawhi, and Fred VanVleet. Like that would be a really good defensive lineup.
Yeah, for sure.
Really good.
Yeah, and look, I mean, just for listeners to the podcast, like I know I keep bringing up Tristan. It's not like I'm like I want Tristan this badly. I just think like a guy with Tristan's skill set would fit really nicely. If it wasn't Tristan, another guy, I would love it. But I mean, like, how many Tristans are there in the league, right? And like the thing with Tristan is like he's very gettable because his contract is like it's worth he's got like $19 million in his contract next year, which like no one would really want to pay that. Or I think it's 19 or 18.
Have room?
But the thing is, the Raptors
can they afford that?
JV has the same contract as him. So if you swap the two of them, it doesn't actually hurt your books. It just doesn't improve your books. So yeah, I mean,
and JV might actually make Cleveland give them a chance of winning a few more games if they're interested in winning a few more games because he can score way better.
They need scoring so badly. like watching that game, it was pathetic. Like the Rodney Hood, like, oh my god, yeah. Cleveland is just Jordan Clarkson is one of the least sensible players in the league right now. He just shoots the ball every single time he touches it.
He's so funny to watch.
Yeah, it's funny because I think he knows he doesn't really care. Like, it's Cleveland's not going to be a team that signs him or whatever, and his best bet is basically to develop as an offensive player and then eventually come off the bench as a six man. But yeah,
how many points would Jordan Clarkson average if he played in the Chinese Basketball Association?
Honestly,
I feel like he'd be like an 85 a game guy.
It would be up there. That might be his destiny. Then he's got to really play up his Filipino heritage.
He might be the best Chinese league player ever.
Honestly, he might be, because there are some players that go over, like Jimmer Fredette.
Just go and get buckets and don't worry about anything else.
Yeah. Also, it's not that bad of a career, all right? Like, if you're Jimmer Fredette, you couldn't cut in the
You're
NBA.
make money.
You're going to make money. And, like, if you land up in one of the big cities, like if you're playing in, like, Shanghai or Beijing or, even, like, I don't know if Chengdu has a team, but it's a great city as well. But, like, yeah, it's a great career. I don't know why people don't look at it more often. But, all right, Victor, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Can we do like 5 minutes to just look ahead for the week and sort of make some predictions?
Sure. Sounds good.
All right, so Monday, today, the Raptors take on the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets are, surprisingly stingy on defense, and they've been quite successful this year. They're 15-7. They're first in the West. It always feels like the Raptors are playing first in the West because the West is so jumbled. There's a new first in the West every time the Raptors beat them. But the Nuggets have given the Raptors trouble in the past, and I think Jokic has sort of been central to that. But I don't know. I see this as a win. I think the Raptors match up pretty well with Denver.
Yeah, I do too. Denver's one of the best teams in the league at running the dribble handoff, right? Jokic is an awesome passer.
Yeah.
And they score really well. I think the Raptors will be all right tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, unless Jamal Murray gets all, nostalgic about coming home and goes off for 60, but I think they'll be okay.
Yeah,
I think they
so
win
too.
tonight.
Yeah, and Jamal and Gary Harris, like, they're really solid players. They just haven't shot the ball well this year, which is just strange. But I don't know. I see it as a win. Also, I don't see them having anybody to guard Kawhi, like, at all. I'm looking at the roster.
No,
like,
they really struggle there.
They can't match up, so, that's a loss. Okay, then on Wednesday, the Raptors play host to the 76ers. That one's going to be very interesting because the Sixers are obviously a revamped team with Jimmy Butler in the mix now. The Raptors, I think they dominated the first meeting, but that was also because Ben Simmons had 11 turnovers. And I just think with the Sixers, if they don't turn the ball over, they're a really good team because they're offensively, they're solid. They have enough talent to, like, score. And their system is pretty good at getting open shots. And that defensively, they're just terrifying. Like, you look at that roster, they have a couple weak spots, but at the key areas where, like, you got Ben Simmons, you got Jimmy Butler, and then you got Joel Embiid, who's probably the best, like, rim protector in the league. Like, Sixers are scary.
Yeah. Sixers are scary, although I'm not that concerned with, if Ben Simmons is the guy who's going to be covering Kawhi, sign me up. I'm all about that.
Okay.
Jimmy Butler's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
The guys who concern me with Kawhi are, like, the Durants of the world, the Giannis's of the world, right? Who struggle to, shoot above. I'm more concerned that game about Embiid because, Serge is a good defender at the 5 spot, but again, he's not very bulky,
Yeah.
And, like, Embiid just bodies the crap out of people. So
yeah, Serge is a bit weak in the legs.
They're not deep enough.
Yeah, the Sixers. The Sixers are definitely, like, a work in progress right now. Like, they're starting Mike Muscala. Like, that shouldn't happen.
You're not winning championships with Mike Muscala starting. No offense to Mike Muscala.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a good point about them not really having got to guard Kawhi because Kawhi's 2 of his best games against the season, Minnesota, when Jimmy Butler was there and was playing that game, he had 35 on 23 shots. And then against Philadelphia, he had 31 on 19 shots. And also, got Ben Simmons to turn the ball over 11 times. So I think it's going to be interesting. It's a bit of a toss-up for me, to be honest, because the Sixers are so unpredictable right now. But that should be a win. Brooklyn Nets on Friday, that should definitely be a win. They just don't have enough talent. Nothing else to say there.
That's kind of like a Cavs situation too, right?
Yeah. It's unfortunate what happened to Karis LeVert, but the team wasn't even that talented with him. And then last one, Milwaukee Bucks on Sunday. That one's going to be very interesting because the Bucks look on paper like they're falling back to earth a little bit, because I think they started out 7-0. I think they're 8-7 since, and they just lost to the Knicks. But this is still a very formidable team. I just think they've had like some very unfortunate losses along the way, and they have a lot of very impressive wins. And
you know they're going to be good, right? Like,
oh yeah,
that's a good basketball team. And we didn't play Giannis last time. Obviously, no KD, or no Kawhi.
That's gonna be fun.
My big thing for that game is going to be you just watch how Lowry and VanVleet respond to what Bledsoe and Brogdon did to them last time, because they absolutely destroyed them. You know, so I want to see how those two respond, especially defensively.
Yeah, Bledsoe is really turning around this year. Like, he's really like made good on his potential as like such an athletic, such a aggressive like ball hand. Like, he just hounds you on the ball all the time. You come around the screen, he's right there. His arms are crazy long, and he's super strong, and he's obviously very athletic. I mean, those are generally speaking the guys that
downtime.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle's gonna struggle. I mean, he struggled in that first game. I think Kyle had 15 assists, but he couldn't score like whatsoever. And
he could not score. No. Yeah. And Bledsoe just kept creating, and Brogdon just kind of, he made Lowry look like a brutal defender on a bunch of occasions.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
And then obviously Giannis, like how the Giannis Kawhi matchup goes, I have no idea. That's just, they're so like unique and weird in their own ways and good.
Yeah.
That's just, I can't predict that.
It's like watching like superheroes fight each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like no one else could do anything against these guys.
I know. It's interesting to see what they do against each other.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Victor. This was fun. In addition to reading all of your breakdowns to Raptors Public, is there anything else you want to plug for the listeners out there?
No. I'm not big on the whole self-promotion.
All right, well, I'll plug Victor, on your behalf then. Follow you on Twitter at least. We could do that, right?
Yeah, we can do that.
Victorious _31. What is 31 the number you wore?
31 is the number I was wearing at Mac. I wore 15 at Carleton, but 31 is my favorite number.
What's the story with 31?
31 is so when I was growing up, my first ever favorite player to play at Mac wore 31, and then the next guy to wear 31, his name was Ben Cates from Toronto.
Okay.
He was awesome. He's very similar to me, so I was like, I want to be like Ben. So I wore 31.
There you go. Also,
a plug for Ben.
Yeah, there you go. Also, for listeners out there, Hamilton's not that bad, okay? Like, the perception of Hamilton at this point is out of control. Hamilton's really on the come up. All right, having gone to school there, as recently as 2015, it's pretty good. I didn't mind living in Hamilton.
Listen, Hamilton's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. They say, oh, it smells bad. There's all the steel industries, whatever. Yeah, if you go down to that area of Hamilton, it smells bad. But the rest of it is really nice. Yeah. And the food scene is just taken off.
Yeah, it really has.
The food scene is really good in Hamilton.
It really has.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Remember the most waterfalls, I think, in the world in Hamilton.
Yep. Yeah, people don't know that about Hamilton.
Yep. We lead the world in waterfalls.
There you go. All right, Victor, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.